Hello, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, the podcast where we discuss cybercrimes and cybersecurity news. This week we have a very wild and rather unusual story. The CEO of Veridico, a cybersecurity firm, alleged to have installed malware on hospital computers. So what the heck happened? This is a cybersecurity company. Surely this can't be a thing that happened, and it was some kind of misunderstanding. Or maybe I'm clickbaiting you. Maybe their security software was a bit more intrusive than it was believed, and the hospital considered it malware. Well, that's how I thought this would go when I saw this headline, but that's not what happened. This actually happened last year, August 8th, 2024, at St. Anthony Hospital in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Jeffrey Bowie, the CEO of Veridico, was caught on security cameras attempting to break into multiple offices. He ends up finding 2 computers, one of which is for hospital employee use only. Hospital staff found him using this computer, and he claimed that a family member was in surgery and he was just trying to use the computer for some reason. Allowing the family of a potential patient to access hospital computers is definitely not standard and could potentially lead to a HIPAA or high-tech violation if the data on the computer is not properly secured and the visitor can access other patients' files. No patient data was accessed in this instance, thankfully. However, malware written by Bowie, apparently on the spot, was found on that machine, and hospital IT staff were able to quickly remediate the issue before it got out of hand. It wasn't necessarily full-fledged malware, rather malicious scripts written by Bowie, or at least he claims. We'll get into some of his other claims later. They're strange. Anyways, it acted as an info stealer and would capture screenshots of the computer every 20 minutes and transfer them to an external device, likely controlled by Bowie himself, and definitely not a device that hospital data is authorized to go. Bowie was arrested on April 14th, 2025, and faces 2 counts of violating Oklahoma's Computer Crimes Act. The website for Veridico is currently not available. In fact, the domain is actually for sale on hugedomains.com. However, I wanted to know more about this firm, so I used the power of the Wayback Machine to look at some archived versions of the website. Veridico was based out of Edmond, Oklahoma, and the site had a couple interviews on the front page. I'm not saying this to be mean, and maybe it's the way the Wayback Machine captured this. Sometimes it's not good at capturing all the design elements, but this doesn't look like the most professionally designed site. Their logo isn't transparent and is just some clip art of an eagle with their name in a generic font. The front page doesn't have a ton of information on it besides these videos, which typically would be on a different part of the site, but I kept digging. Veridico advertised on their website services including vulnerability assessments, incident response, threat intelligence, fitness tracker forensics, which is incredibly specific, and weird that that's the only kind of digital forensics Veridico offers, though maybe it's a really niche market they've cornered. And notably, the services also included physical security assessments, social engineering, and penetration testing. Now, those last 3 are very much valid services to offer, and there are many legitimate companies that you can pay to have a white hat hacker or an ethical hacker try to break into your building or hack your machines. This is so you can find and become aware of realistically, practically exploitable vulnerabilities and fix them before an unethical hacker trying to steal your data or sabotage your operation finds them first. However, this was not what happened with the hospital, because these are carefully planned engagements with a very specific contract of what is and is not allowed, when the test will take place, how long the test will take place, what machines will be targeted, and so on. If this was a planned test under a contract, Bowie would not have been arrested, and, well, there would be evidence of some sort of contract. I would also like to state, though, that Bowie never claims this was an ethical hacking engagement and does take responsibility that this was very much unethical. Veridico was likely a very small firm, I'd never heard of it, and they don't even have an office space. I looked up the address from the Wayback Machine, and I'm pretty sure it's just Jeffrey Bowie's house. I just got a Zillow page with a rather nice-looking home in Oklahoma. If you run a business out of your house, yeah, pretty normal to put your home address as the business address. There were other staff besides Jeffrey Bowie, though all of them except Giovanna Floor and an image of a robot named Reek Bobot, spelled Beaubawt, have the last name Bowie, so it seems like this may be some kind of family business, or that to make the company look legit, he needed to just kinda hire his family to bill in some basic roles. I don't think this was a joke website. Older versions of the site from before the incident are pretty clearly actually owned by Jeff Bowie, and I suspect maybe the adding of this other information is to try to rebrand or make it look more legitimate, and not just like a single operation run by one guy. But also the robot thing is really strange. Either way, it does seem that at least at some point the company and website were legitimate, owned by Jeffrey Bowie. However, the hospital was likely not a customer of Veridico. I've been talking about things Jeffrey Bowie had said, and this is from a LinkedIn post he made. He claimed he was never arrested, which contradicts his police headshot being shown in the news, and claims that the media is defaming them, and as a result he has experienced reputational damage and a business loss exceeding $12,000. And yeah, if you run a security firm and then go install malware on a hospital computer, that is wildly unethical and will indeed lead to your reputation being hurt and a lot of people not wanting to use your services. But I don't think that's unreasonable, considering he installed malware on a hospital computer. He goes on to explain in his post that he was having an episode of psychosis, being incredibly paranoid, and it led him to believe his data was unsafe. He was being seen by a different hospital in the same network at the time for mental health treatment, and he claims that if his treatment were not botched, he would not have touched a single device. He also said, though, that his mental health situation does not excuse what happened, he just wanted to add context. Many on LinkedIn have advised him to shut up and get a lawyer, which is generally pretty smart if you've been arrested. Bowie also offered to speak to a media organization in exchange for payment, and then later added that this was apparently sarcastic, and with this, I think he should also shut up and get a lawyer. As you can see, this whole situation is just so incredibly strange and absolutely wild to me. I will actually be checking back on this one because I really want to know how this ends up going in a court of law. But what do you think? What is the full story? Was it a lapse in mental illness, or was it something more nefarious? I'm more inclined to believe the hospital's side of the story, which is that he was trying to maliciously steal this data. I don't want to accuse this man of using mental illness to cover up committing some kind of nefarious crime, and I understand mental illness may contribute to unusual actions like this. It does kind of read to me like he's trying to lessen the impact, though. Especially because in his post, he wasn't taking the situation very seriously, and he never really actually apologized for anything he did. Instead, he blamed the hospital. Having a botched mental health treatment is definitely something that can and does happen a lot. But that doesn't mean you break into hospitals and install malware on their machines. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, and thanks to Security Affairs, the Register, and News 9 for information on Jeffrey Bowie's arrest and the situation as a whole. I guess I can also sort of thank Jeffrey Bowie for his LinkedIn post, though unusual. It did add some interesting context to potentially explore. My name is Chloe Tonis, and until next time, stay secure.